This is Mick Foley.
This is Harley Race.
This is Shelton Benjamin.
This is Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff.
This is the Monster Abyss.
And this is Daniel Bryan.
This is JBL, and you're watching the MWF.
Be there, live.
Wrestling fans around the corner, around the world, welcome to another installment of Boston Wrestling Sports, Wrestling Insiders, the podcast, where we discuss the latest news, history, and memories on the greatest form of action and excitement across all forms of sports and entertainment when it's done right. I'm Dan Marotti, along with
WWE Hall of Famers Tony, Mr. USA Atlas.
Tony. The fans are going to feel like they're drug addicts this week with all the content we're giving them. This is going to be the third one this week.
Oh, wonderful. Because the fans, they, even though they can't go to wrestling matches or go to conventions and stuff, it is always good to, not only for the fans to hear from us, but, it's good for us to hear from the fans, too. Without the fans, there'd be no Stone Cold, there'd be no John Cena, there'd be no wrestling. And I think right now the WWE is really feeling a big pinch how important the fans are, because like you just said, they just released tons and tons of wrestlers, guys losing their job because the fans are not there to support it.
Right. Yeah, that's a big part of the problem right now.
So without the fans, it's hard to have wrestling without wrestling fans. How you go? It's hard.
It's certainly worth thinking about, Tony. Again, before we get going on this episode, we want to chew the fat a little bit, get down to business for you. You are available even during these crazy times for personal appearances, birthday parties. You're doing commissioned artwork on eBay. You have your little drawing prints. Forget about Cameo, Tony, or even doing the personal phone calls. Who needs a 30-second video from you when they can have a personal phone call that will last a lifetime? I know you've been having a lot of fun with some of the fans you've been talking to around the world recently.
Yes, I have. I talked to some of these young people, and what's always surprised me when I talk to somebody, they would bring up they would tell me a Tony Atlas story, which is very, very interesting to me because, we travel so much. There's a lot of stuff we did and said that we don't exactly remember. Yeah. Not that we don't think a fan, but it's hard to remember a story of your interaction with a fan in New York. And you may not go back to that town again for maybe a year or two. So there's a lot of space in between. But I hear stories about guys. The story that they would tell me about the 80s, the 90s. Yeah. Where they met me somewhere. And one thing I feel proud of myself for, I ain't got no bad story yet. Everybody told me that the meeting me was always a pleasure. That I was funny and I was, down to earth. And it was all good stuff.
Well, that's a good thing, Tony. And for those that can't get enough, Tony, we've been pumping out these Wrestling Insider podcast audio episodes until Governor Charlie Baker allows you back into Massachusetts. But we're going to, for the very first time, do something that I'm interested to see the reaction to. We're going to have a Tony Atlas World News, current events type program where you talk about things that have nothing to do with wrestling, but things that are in the newspaper, on cable news, and so on. And you're very opinionated.
Right. And Dan, did any of the fans this week send in any questions that will want to be answered?
Yes, Tony. As a matter of fact, we learned, it'll be a couple of days by the time fans hear this episode, but a former WWE champion, Alberto Del Rio, was arrested in San Antonio, Tony. He sexually assaulted a woman that he claimed was unfaithful to him. He tied her hands with boxing straps, put a sock in her mouth, penetrated her with various objects, punched her, slapped her, then forced her to wear a dress and dance for him. He also threatened to take her young son and leave him in the middle of a road, Tony. Alberto Del Rio has certainly fallen several pegs from when he was on top in WWE.
That's sad.
Did you have a chance to engage with Del Rio? I think he was coming in pretty much when you were leaving in 2010.
Yeah, I was already gone. I did come into contact with a little bit. Like I remember me, Dusty Rhodes, right after WrestleMania, and I had a little contact with him. I think it was WrestleMania 2012.
Miami.
The same year. Yeah, the same year that they did Legend House, because they had all the people from Legend House. I had a little conversation with them. And then I saw them on a couple of independents later after that. And he always was nice to me. He came up, shook my hand, introduced himself to me. But so I have no ill feeling because he had, the few times I did meet him, he was always with respect for me. But that's sad and very, very shocking. See, I got a daughter.
Yeah.
And I got granddaughters, and I got a wife. And the idea of somebody doing that to my daughter or granddaughter, that's rough.
Well, Tony, I tell you this, it has been a tough decade for Del Rio. He was in a relationship with the much younger Paige of WWE. They had many bouts with law enforcement getting involved, along with celebrity media. That relationship dissolved before it really had a chance to get bad, and now Del Rio's back in the news here, penetrating women with various objects.
And then he blew it. He blew it with Vince by punching out one of his office personnel.
Well, you know what? As much as and I don't know Del Rio personally. I'm just going on secondhand information from talent that has worked with him over the past and different stories I've come across in the media like this one. I'll say when the first time he left WWE, I believe it was a social media person made some disparaging remarks about his ethnic background. So you know what? In a situation like that, if it was a different time in the world of wrestling, that guy would have gotten his ass whipped 10 times worse than it did that day. So I don't hold malice.
No, brother,
Let's hear it.
no.
Right.
Not in the 70s. See, that's what I talked about on that last episode we did. We had a certain respect for a person's belief. We didn't have to agree with him. Did you know? Like I told you earlier on the earlier broadcast about, I had to ride with Klansmen.
You did.
That what made the business work, because you're not going to find people be around a group of people and like everybody or agree with everybody. Everybody gonna have their own take on things. So the guy may make a Mexican joke. How many black jokes you think I hear over the career? I know a person nobody out over a freaking black joke.
You're not wrong, but what I'm saying is,
there's a time. No, there's a time and place. He's there representing Vince. Okay, he could have. There's all type of ways of handling things without violence. Martin Luther King tried to teach black people that years ago. Violence solved nothing. How did he benefit from that? He would have benefited more by handling it the way Mark Henry did. Mark Henry didn't punch out Micah Hayes.
Mark Henry wound up in a plum position as a result of that.
Exactly. He handled it in a professional manner, not like a caveman. That old primitive knuckle dragon, Neanderthal thinking, it don't fit the corporate world.
You're right. You're 100% right. It doesn't fit the corporate world. You're right.
No, because that guy there could have sued the WWE. He put the Vince in jeopardy. He's an idiot.
Because that's what I'm saying. If this was the 1970s, when the world isn't quite the way it is now, you could see that guy getting a beating, and it wouldn't have been that big of a deal.
Right, because because this guy is an employee of Vince.
Right.
Now, if Vince don't do nothing about it, then what Vince would do, Vince would set himself up liable for lawsuit
to be sued,
to allow this type of action to take place in his company. When Vince called you to work, everything is paid for by the WWE. They are responsible for the billing. They're responsible for you. They're responsible for everything that goes on in that building. It's Vince's building.
Right.
That's like he's coming into your house and punching somebody out. You pay the mortgage. You pay the electricity bill. You pay the insurance. You pay everything. You pay for the food. You pay for the lights. You pay for everything. And this guy gonna come in and break up furniture and get in a fight. He showed no respect for your house.
Fair enough. Well, Tony, this is a guy that he had the quote-unquote WWE look. He was someone that I think WWE would have liked to have set up as a top heel for many, many years to come. I don't think he ever really clicked with the fans. His run as a babyface was even worse. He had a comeback when he was actually managed by our friend Dutch Mantel as Zeb Coulter, when Zeb was in a wheelchair, and that led to, I think it was called the League of Nations faction, and that went nowhere. And again, he was out the door as his relationship with Paige kind of went all over the place across social media. Tony, do you think this man's career is done as a result of this?
Yes.
You do? If you were...
because see what happened, once you make, and I know this from experience. That's how I know it is. I know it from experience. It's just like, I told you this. You didn't believe me. I told you when that woman go back, she would never get that top position again. Remember I told you that?
Ronda Rousey, yep.
No, not Rousey, the other girl. Snoop Dogg niece.
Sasha Banks.
Remember I told you that?
Yep.
Okay. Has she got that top position yet?
She has a very featured position, but she hasn't held the championship.
I didn't say that. I said, does she have that top position she had when she left?
But she never was the top woman.
She was up a lot higher than what she is now.
Fair enough.
All right. It's because they can't trust her in that spot no more.
Fair
See,
enough.
the higher Vince put you, the deeper you go into his pockets. The deeper you get into the investor's pockets. So what ended up happening was, to put you in a high position, they have to trust you with their money. See, this ain't free.
Right.
I mean, Vince ain't doing it. Somebody paying for this. It ain't. It ain't Alberto. Alberto is getting a check for what? 4 days out of a week to work. Sometimes 2.
Yep.
2 to 4 days a week is what he worked, and this guy is bringing in between $250,000, if not more.
Oh, Del Rio, he was probably if he didn't hit 7 figures, he was probably pretty close. He had a very good spot.
That's 3/4 of a million.
Yeah.
And for you not to appreciate that and conduct yourself. See, Mark Henry went through the same thing. Mm-hmm. But see what Mark Henry did, he took it to the office like you're supposed to do. You don't take matters, he's an idiot. That's all I got to say.
So I don't think even before.
And you know how I know he's an idiot?
Why is that?
Because I was one at 2.
You were a hothead.
It take one to know one?
Yeah.
Okay, he's an idiot.
He was a hothead. Tony, it's a shame because he might not be my cup of tea as far as what I enjoy on a professional wrestling broadcast, but WWE liked him an awful lot that they brought him back a second time, even with the issues there were before. He had the issues with Paige, and now still a free agent at a time when before the pandemic, WWE was signing virtually every top star they could get their hands on to keep them from AEW.
Have you noticed something between the generations?
What is that, Tony?
Okay. There was, in the 70s and 80s, you didn't hear about guys being released that much. Maybe 1 or 2 guys that would break the rule in the 70s and 80s, if you stop and think about it. But in the last 20 years, you hear about all type of guys doing things that was unheard of in the 70s and 80s.
Right.
I mean, guys would not jeopardize the corporation. I mean, if something happened to jeopardize the business, it was not intentionally done.
Yeah, you're right.
It was not an intentional thing done. These kids don't care. They think that they invincible. They think they could do what they want and come back and get what they want. You see, one of the biggest mistakes that Vince made when he bring people back, and he know not to do that. Everybody didn't bring me back. But I don't think Vince got full control of things. I think it's a board that you have to do it because of this, because you got somebody else in the ear. But back in the 80s, you never saw Vince again for another 10 years. Sasha Banks would have been in her 50s before she went back there. He would have done it just like he did me. Every time he brought me back, I was in such good shape. He sent me back home because I was in shape.
Well,
Fatty put me in a suit because every time he saw me, he said, "Tony Atlas, them damn arms are yours. Them damn arms are yours." In other words, you still in shape. God damn it.
I tell you, Tony, I one of my concerns is years from now, I think WWE may find themselves in some difficult positions with all of the relations that go on now, where there are so many women on the active roster. It's a different day than your peak when there were a lot of rats in different cities. Now you have women that are with the guys on the road every day, and it's led to marriages, relationships, and so on. I think as some of these relationships go sour, I think WWE may find themselves in some difficult positions as far as maybe you have to keep one and not the other, separating them at different times. You've already seen during different drafts and superstar shakeups.
I think the independent's in worse condition.
Why is that?
Because every independent show, and I complain, because I do not want to end up in court But one day, the most valuable shows out here are the independent. I have never worked for Vince and had to undress in front of women. Never.
Oh, that's a good point, too.
I mean, these freaking independent promoters, brother, they get one fucking dressing room, and they got the girls. I mean, I can't go to. I hate dressing at an independent show. I'd rather get dressed at home. I can't shower at an independent show. I can't change clothes at an independent show. I got to go behind a curtain or do something. They got the girls walking around, the girls in the room dressing with the guys, and one day some girl going to say something. The only reason they don't say anything right now is because they know there's no money involved.
Right.
The independents get away with that crap because the girl know that there's nothing she could get from that guy. But if that company ever get big, like let's say TNA or these guys, I don't know what came to a person's mind to let women and men share the same dressing room. I thought it was bad when they put the good guys and the bad guys in the same dressing room. I think it took the mystique away from the fans.
Sure.
I mean, we're all coming out the same door, going back in the same door, in the same room. The fans know we're in the same damn room.
Well, I agree with you on the women, though. I never really thought about it like that.
You're having the New England Patriots and the New York Jets, Giants in the same room before a game, during the game.
Yeah.
It takes away something that the promoter is not paying attention to. And what it does, when you see one guy come hit from the other side and your opponent come on the other side, it set a battlefield. When they come out the same door, it's like a team. You're on the same team. Both teams are coming off the same ship.
It's a good point.
And that's why the promoter kept them separated, so people would look at the match as a competition, not as a show.
Well, I've believed for a long time that these women, that they truly deserve their own live events. They deserve their own TV show, and to let the fans that love women's wrestling.
If you can't put them in give them a freaking dressing room, how do you expect you're going to do all that stuff you just said?
Well,
I mean, what is so hard about
you turn it into a separate entity?
Why is that so difficult for a promoter?
To set it up as a separate entity, almost like you have the WNBA and the regular NBA.
All you have to do is have separate dressing room. What's wrong with that?
A lot of venues that independent wrestling run, they only have one locker room. So what do?
You divide it. Put a curtain up or something.
All right,
but I tell you, one day, something bad going to happen, and you know what these independent promoters don't know. What they don't know.
Let's hear it.
The girl that's going against Joe Biden right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
That happened 30 years ago.
Yep.
You understand? This stuff don't go away.
No, this could be decades from now.
It may not affect these guys now, but these girls started telling their stories of how they was subjected to dress and undress with men's. Then you're gonna have the federal government to go and investigate every independent show.
Just what independent wrestling would need, right? Is more regulation.
Right. And just because they're too stupid to separate. If you want to have girl matches, have a room for them. Don't put them in with the guys.
My thought on that. You saw what the setup was at Memorial Hall back on December 28th.
Yeah, some separation.
We didn't have that problem.
No, you have to have that. It's not that hard to do. It's not.
Right.
It's not that hard to do.
All right. Well,
but you have to give the girls their own private space, especially now. You take the guy who was trying to get on the Supreme Court. That was he was a teenager when that shit happened.
Now, do you think that Joe Biden, if he heard the story of Alberto Del Rio, maybe he'd get a little excited, where he apparently penetrated that woman up the skirt back in the 90s, hearing about Alberto Del Rio using various objects? Do you think that Joe may want to come out of his basement?
I don't understand what you're saying.
Do you think Joe Biden might get excited? He might want to relive the good old days and get out of his basement.
At 77 years old, wait till you hit 70 and they see you ask that question.
I don't know why he wants to run for president at 77, but that's a different story for a different
time.
time.
We already got a 70-year-old president.
That's true. And that seems like that's all that's going to run.
Everybody that ran was in their 70s.
Exactly. That's the problem.
Everybody's out there. So, we got the guy running Congress right there. Look, old skeleton.
Well, we know our friend down here at the studio, Mark Dustin, he loves to penetrate women, but only when they agree to it. That's the way it should be. Tony, any final thoughts on Alberto Del Rio? We're going to follow the legal case to see where it goes, and that'll be that.
I got the same comment from Vince got. You hurt yourself.
Adios. How about that? Adios, Alberto.
Adios.
All right, Tony, we're going to be back later this week. We're going to have our first installment of the Atlas World News. Nothing to do with pro wrestling, everything to do with current events around the globe. And again, Tony, you're available for personal appearances, commissioned artwork, phone calls. Hit us up across social media. For the Hall of Famer Tony Atlas, I'm Dan Marotti. Please stay well, stay healthy. We'll talk soon. Good night.